Hi, love bug. Hi. Hello and welcome back, and a big special hello if you are new. Today I thought I would share with you the books that I read in July. This really feels like a full circle moment for me because my very first video on this channel was the books that I read in June a month ago. And while my corner on the internet is very minuscule, I'm incredibly thankful for it, but I am also just extremely proud of myself for for doing this for a month and posting weekly for a month and doing this for literally no other reason than for myself. And I'm just really proud of myself for that. But before I go and get super sentimental, let's talk about books. In the month of July, I read 7 books. I read 4 ebooks and 3 physical books. I'm honestly super surprised that I read 4 ebooks and that I read more ebooks than I did physical books. That's not very characteristic of me, but Kindle Unlimited just makes it too convenient and too easy. But I will start with the physical books that I read this month. The very first physical book that I read this month was You Are Here by David Nicholls. If his name sounds familiar, it is because he is who wrote One Day. I read One Day many years ago and I loved it. It absolutely wrecked my heart, like into 1,000 different ways. So I was very intrigued when I saw this book at Barnes & Noble. I thought the cover was stunning. The end pages, when you open it up, are also just really beautiful. There's a Jane Austen quote right at the beginning of the book. And there's like bukus of praise about this book. So it was just an automatic buy for me. It tells the story of Marnie and Michael. Marnie is divorced and she lives in London. She is very reclusive because she doesn't want anything to remind her of her ex and the life that they shared together. She works remotely, so she is extremely isolated from everyone, often by choice, but not 100% by choice. And then this is written like post-pandemic, so that comes into play as well as to why she doesn't socialize, because she had gotten so accustomed to just being all by herself. And Michael, who is a teacher, he's a geography teacher, and he is recently separated from his wife. He begins taking long solitary walks across the English countryside, and a mutual friend of Michael and Marnie's kind of arrange this excursion. So Michael wants to walk from one end of England to the other. So a few people decide to tag along, and Marnie is one of them. Most people had planned on leaving after 2 or 3 days, but Marnie stays on. This book was incredibly sweet. I really felt like I was peering into the characters' lives. They felt very much like real life people to me. And my heart hurt for so many characters, even really minor side characters. Like there's a man who Michael stays with for a night on his walking excursion, and like that just tore at my heart so much. So it is just very human, and it's a really great character-driven novel. I will say though, I think all of the praise, so you have all of this on the back, and then at the front there's like 2 or 3 pages of like more praise about the book, and I do think that it hyped the book up a little bit too much for me. I thought that this was easily going to be a 5-star read, and it was a very solid 4, but it just wasn't as good as I had anticipated and I had hoped and it had been hyped up to be. But with that, I also think that I am not necessarily like the target demographic to who this book would be super profound and amazing for, because all the characters are in like their very late 30s, early 40s, they're separated or divorced, and I am a younger millennial, I'm a newlywed. Like there were just things like that that kind of, I feel like potentially had a barrier to getting the full impact of this book. But it was still, like I said, very solid 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. And also, like, it's stunning. It's really beautiful. I loved the way that the book was broken down. So each section is like a day on their walk, and then it has like alternating points of view. So one chapter is Michael's, and then one chapter is Marnie's. There's also a section where they're like listening to music, and so each like little chapter is like the song that they're listening to and their conversation about it, and then it goes to the next song. And I really loved that too. It's very well written as well. The next physical book that I read was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book in the Divine Rivals or Letters of Enchantment duology. I don't want to go too much into the plot of this because I don't want to ruin Divine Rivals if you've not read it or if you're planning on reading it. This one definitely took you deeper into the war and into the mythology of the book, which I really enjoyed. I wanted more of that when I read the first book. However, the romance definitely takes a back seat in this one, which I didn't like as well. Like, I would have liked to have had all of the war and the mythology and all of that, but also have had Iris and Roman together. But I understand why it was written the way it was. It is extremely well written. I enjoyed all of the characters, even the side characters. The ending was really exciting, and it definitely kept me on my toes. I didn't know what was going to happen. There was a lot of issues with like morality with both of the gods. Even the god that you were supposed to kind of root for, that was like on the good side, definitely had some major flaws, I think. And you could see why people would be appealed to like the bad god and the issues there. So I really enjoyed that a lot, and I really want to read more of Rebecca Ross. I think she's got another duology out. It's like A River Enchanted or something. I don't know, something similar to that, but I really want to read that, and that's definitely been bumped up higher on my to buy list. Also, it was so refreshing to read a duology. I feel like every book that I read is a series that is within a series. Like, so you've got a prequel series and the actual series, or like a series that takes place after the series you're reading, and or there's like a spin-off of the series, and then it's like a bunch of interconnected standalones within a series. And it feels like the same like 3 or 4 authors just dominate like my entire like reading, like, because I'm trying to read their books and there's just so many to get into the story. So reading a duology felt very refreshing because you do get the characters for more than one book, which is great because I loved the characters. But at the same time, it's like 2 and I was done, and then I could go read someone else and experience another author's work and another story, which I really appreciated. So I definitely want to be on the lookout for more duologies in the future. The last physical book that I read was A Light in the Flame by Jennifer Armentrout. This is a Flesh and Fire novel. It's the second book in the series, and A Flesh and Fire is the prequel series to Blood and Ash. I think that you need to be reading both of these together in order for the story to make sense. If you aren't, I just think there's just going to be a lot of holes in the plot. This book has helped me understand the books in From Blood and Ash much better, and also like From Blood and Ash has made the events of this book make a lot more sense to me. So again, they really just need to be read together. I'm not going to go too much into the plot because I feel like it could totally spoil the like 5 or 6 books that came before it, but it was really good. Nicholls and Sierra were definitely falling in love, which I adored. It was very sweet. It was very action-packed. There was constantly something happening. It was very unpredictable. I compared the ending of this book to the last Blood and Ash. There was so much that happened that sets the next book up, and it was very heartbreaking and exciting at the same time. I really can't wait. I think I'm getting closer to the end of the series, both of them, and I'm quite sad about that. It also just made me want to go back and reread the first Blood and Ash book because it's just been such a journey and everything makes so much more sense now. I think the first From Blood and Ash book is Penelope just doesn't know a lot about the world that she's in, so the world building you're kind of building it along with her, which it was really an interesting way to write the world building, but you don't have a ton of world building because she just doesn't know about the world that she's living in. So I think now having the prequel and having, 3 or 4 more books down the road in Blood and Ash, I think it would be really interesting to go back and reread. But we got to finish first, obviously, but it's been such a good journey with these characters and these books. Moving on to ebooks, like I said, I read 4. The first one was Yours Cheerfully, which is part of the Emmy Lake Chronicles by A.J. Pearce. This is the second book in the series. I don't know if this is like a trilogy or if it'll keep going on past it. There are 3 books out now, is why I say that. But Emmy is settling in more with the magazine that she writes for. So the books are set in London during World War II. So Emmy writes for a women's magazine, and they are charged with, from the government, to help recruit women into the workforce and into the factories. So Emmy begins to go undercover, kind of, not necessarily undercover, because like it's known what she's doing, but she is going into these factories and things, talking with women, seeing the working conditions, and writing pieces about that. But she's also finding that it's definitely not as rosy of a picture it's being painted, and women who are potentially choosing to go into these factories are actually going to have a lot of hardships faced upon them, especially if they don't have family to help take care of their children. There aren't necessarily like daycares or nurseries to help them. The hours are not the best, and they get paid less than men. So Emmy is very conflicted to write these pieces to encourage women to come in and work, because it honestly isn't the best of circumstances, but she also like wants to do her part. It was really sweet and fun. Emmy is a very spunky character, and I really like her. The little like side events that happened in like her personal life and in her friends and family's personal lives were really sweet too. It was just a really like wholesome read, and I really enjoyed it. Next, I read The Bodyguard by Katherine. This tells the story of Hannah, who is a bodyguard. She is just kind of your average woman. She's quite petite, and the book kind of focuses on how, in order to be a bodyguard, it's more about stopping catastrophe before it strikes, rather than like being big and buff and like taking down the bad guys in the moment of chaos. So Hannah is charged with helping guard a celebrity. His name is, I think, Jacob Stapleton. I can't remember now. But he is in town because his mother is really sick. It's, I guess, his hometown, or the town where his parents live now. And he has a stalker. So in order to not worry his mom, who is trying to heal and recover, the agency decides that Hannah is going to pose as Jacob's girlfriend. And it was just sweet and fun. I love fake dating tropes, so it definitely, hit the spot for me. A couple years ago, there was a romance book that came out in the summer, and it was like loosely based off of like this journalist who like interviewed Chris Evans and then like followed him around for a few days and like met his family and stuff. And that book really fell short for me in the expectations I had for it. So The Bodyguard definitely kind of filled that void of like a celebrity romance that I needed. It was really fun and sweet. There's also an epilogue at the end, which sums up all of the characters and their stories, which I really appreciated, because you do wonder about like minor and side characters after you finish. So that was really nice. The plot twist was insane. I almost put the book down and didn't pick it back up. I got so mad. So I don't know. I just have a lot of good things to say about it. It was a really fun, enjoyable little like rom-com to read. The next book that I read was a Regency romance, which is The Earl Next Door by Ashtyn Newbold. I've been on the hunt for a good Regency romance. Obviously, I adore Jane Austen, and I've read Georgette Heyer, which I really loved as well, but I've been looking for something a little bit more modern. I'm not the biggest fan of Bridgerton. I've read one of the books and I didn't really enjoy it, and I am not the biggest fan of the show either. I do watch it, but I hated season 1. I loved season 2 so much, in season 3 has just been okay. I've actually not even finished it. That's how it's just like meh for me. And then I had read Martha Waters' Regency Vows, so I'd read a few of those, and they were fun, but they're not on Kindle Unlimited anymore, and I've just not enjoyed them enough to go out and purchase them. So I was really hoping that The Earl Next Door would kind of fit the bill for just a fun Regency romance, just kind of a palate cleanser in between books, and it did so much. It tells the story of Henrietta. She and her sister have to flee London after a very embarrassing situation that Henrietta gets herself into. She is quite known for putting herself in, like, very good intentioned, but puts herself in situations that aren't the best. So they go to Bath so they can finish out the season and still be around people so they can hopefully find husbands, but they're fleeing like that scandal that happened in London. So Henrietta is so excited that they're in Bath because her sister's kind of childhood love is supposed to be renting the house next door to them, and her sister is a widow. So Henrietta's hoping that this is finally like her sister's chance, and the male character in her sister's life is named Miles. So she's hoping this is a chance for them to come together and to get married and to live happily ever after, except an Earl actually ends up taking the house next door because he offers a much higher sum of money to rent it for the season, which Henrietta is not very happy about. Obviously, the Earl has his own reasons for being in Bath. He's trying to prevent his sister from marrying a really poor match. He's older, he's quite rude, but he has enough money to pay off their father's debts. So the Earl is coming into town, his name's Charlie, to hopefully marry rich so he can pay off his father's debts and save his sister from a match, but he doesn't want that known. So it definitely starts off with like an enemies to lovers, frenemies to lovers. It was honestly just really, really fun. It was really funny. I laughed out loud multiple times. The characters were really sweet. I loved the romance. It felt very real, very genuine, and it did feel like it was very Regency based, but also, I guess, in terms of writing and things like that, it was pretty modern. So it just really hit all the marks. There are other books within the series. The next book sounds so much fun. I'm really looking forward to that. I'll probably end up reading that sometime in August. And then Ashtyn Newbold also has other books on Kindle Unlimited, but they don't have the cartoon covers. So I guess I just had never paid as much attention to them. So hopefully eventually we'll make our way to those as well. Lastly, I read Wild Love, which is the first book in the Rose Hill series by Elsie Silver. I read Chestnut Springs and I adored that series so much. It surprised me how much I loved those books and how well written they were and how much I fell in love with Chestnut Springs and all the characters. I was really excited for Rose Hill, and I struggled with it a little bit because it just wasn't Chestnut Springs. Like, I wasn't in Chestnut Springs. The characters weren't the same. I wasn't going to have, the family dinners and things like that. So it was different, and it did take me a minute to get into it. But I did really enjoy it a lot. It tells the story of Ford Grant, who, if you've read Chestnut Springs, is Willa's older brother. He is, he owns an app for streaming, and then he's trying to open a recording studio so artists can have, this solace to come, get away from it all, record music that they may not normally have made. It makes me think of Taylor Swift when she did Evermore and Folklore. That's the kind of vibes that I'm feeling from this. And then I'm totally blanking on the names. Rosie is the love interest, Rosalie. So she is fleeing just kind of her life in the city. Things just have not worked out the way that she's planned them to. Her and Ford have always had banter. So Ford was her brother's best friend. And she kind of followed them around growing up and things like that. So she begins working for Ford, and obviously those like a little bit of feelings that they had when they were younger blossom into more. It was sweet, it was fun, it was just kind of classic Elsie Silver, but like I said, it really did take a minute to get into it just because I missed Chestnut Springs so much. But I will definitely be continuing on with the series. I think West is, his story is next, and it comes out in September for Kindle Unlimited, so I will definitely be reading that. And then whatever the other the Gold Rush Ranch or whatever that one is, I'll get into that eventually too, because I just really adore her writing. But anyway, that sums up all of the books that I read in July. Thank you so much for being here and for letting me babble on to you about books. Please leave any recommendations that you have for me below. I would love to have more books to read. I feel like the books that I've read this year have been very good, but they've not been great. I was kind of looking through the books that I've read since we're over halfway, and I've only given 2 books 5 stars this year. And if I were to narrow down the books that were like my favorite of the whole year, I have like maybe 3 that I could really confidently say and recommend. So I definitely want to read books that have a little bit more depth and are just a little bit more throughout the end of the year. So if you have anything that you feel would fit that, then please let me know. I enjoy fluffy romance and romantasy as much as the next girl, but I definitely feel like I just want something with a little bit more depth to it and something that's going to make me feel a lot. So, but anyway, thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye.